What if the greatest trick of the spiritual path isn't mastering the divine, but convincing yourself that you're the one in charge?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Hot on Winds. It is Saturday, August 8th, and honestly, I am feeling like I finally shed an old skin today. The heaviness in my shoulders is gone, and I am feeling light, caffeinated, and ready to dive in.
I'm feeling a bit more grounded, though a little wired from a long day of debugging code. I think I need a bit of that energy you're bringing, Emily.
Well, if you need a boost, we've got some strange news to balance out the heavy vibes. Did you see the reports out of Brazil? Capybaras are literally crashing the legislature. Just unbothered, chilling in the middle of political chaos.
Honestly, the capybara way is the only way to live. No hierarchies, no arguments, just vibes.
Exactly. Though, speaking of chaos, we're missing our resident comedian today. Paco is dialing in from home.
Hey Paco, we miss you here, but we hope the jaw is feeling better after that dental demon visit.
We're just glad he's back to eating more than just plain oatmeal.
True. Anyway, we have a heavy hitter for you today. We're moving into a text that is as polarizing as it is potent. We're looking at EA, Koetting Evoking Eternity, Forbidden Rites of Evocation.
Oh, this one is spicy. It's all about that tension between the magician, as a commander, someone who demands presence from the external, and the ancient, much more terrifying ritual of total surrender. Is it true mastery, or just a very dangerous ego trip?
Let's get into the mechanics of command versus the ritual of losing oneself. Let's walk through it. Alright, let's open the book. We're looking at the introduction in Chapter 1. And right away, Koetting sets this stage with a pretty intense historical pivot. He starts talking about the first priests Ishtar, Yahweh, and says they didn't bother coming down themselves. They sent messengers.
Right? Like a cosmic bureaucracy. The gods stay in the high office, and the messengers do the legwork.
Exactly. But then he introduces the ambition of the practitioner. He says some priests were fine with just receiving help, but others started asking, how can I command these legions myself?
Of course. Because why settle for a blessing when you can try to put a leash on a demon?
That's exactly the energy he's leaning into. He even uses this striking imagery of angels turning oceans to blood and cities to ash. And he asks, and I'm quoting him here, how can I make them obey my will?
It's so aggressive. It's not, please guide me. It's, here is my command. It's almost like he's describing a hostile takeover of the spiritual plane.
And he links it to this old world idea of disease. He says, before antibiotics, people saw illness as a demon inhabiting the body like a vessel. And the doctors back then using herbs, prayers, water, they try to drive it out.
And he adds this dark little detail that sometimes the demon screams so violently while leaving the body that the exit caused more damage than the actual possession. That's a heavy way to start a manual.
It's visceral, but look at how he pivots from that painful exit to, well, envy. He says some people watched those exorcisms and didn't feel pity, they felt envy.
Because they didn't want to be cured. They wanted the power to call the thing out.
See, that's the pure chaos tactic I was telling you about, Seth. Why just fix the tooth when you can try to command the demon living in the root canal?
Spoken like a true comedian, Paco. But he's serious here. He claims that through the efforts of mages who weren't burdened by fear of God or devil, this art was perfected. He's saying you can pull an archangel onto a flaming chariot right into your temple to do your bidding.
It's such a massive distinction, though. He spends a lot of time clarifying the difference between invocation and evocation. He says invocation is bringing the power into yourself like a spiritual infusion.
But evocation? That's calling the entity out to manifest in front of you. To stand there, visible, so you can talk to it like a mortal.
Like an interview, but with much higher stakes and potentially more fire.
Precisely. And he even brings in this historical warfare aspect. He talks about ancient cities with massive walls. The defenders used invocation to call on gods to protect the gates. But the attackers used evocation to convince those same gods to leave the city unprotected.
That is actually terrifying. Using ritual to effectively evict a deity from a city? That's a level of spiritual sabotage I didn't expect from the intro.
It sets the tone for his main thesis. He claims that all this ceremoniary and Judeo-Christian coloring in modern magic is actually a harmful influence. He wants to strip away the beautiful Latin names and get back to the simple truths.
Simple truths involving commanding legions of darkness. Right, very simple.
But wait, look at his claim in Chapter 1. This is the heart of the architect angle we're discussing. He says that once you learn the basic principles, evocation isn't even an art or a science anymore. He says it becomes a basic skill, like reading or driving a car.
Wait, what? That feels like a massive downplay. You can't compare summoning a legion to parallel parking a sedan.
He literally says that. He says it's an instinctive skill. Once you master the principles, you don't need to refresh the basics. It becomes a fundamental part of the operator.
See, that's where I get skeptical. He's saying the details and the strict rituals of the old grimoires don't actually matter. He claims the success depends on the principles, not the specific names or the fancy pentagrams.
That sounds like a recipe for a disaster, Seth. I didn't use the right name, but I follow the principles. That's how you end up with a demon in your kitchen instead of a demon in a circle.
But that's his point, Paco. He's arguing that the superficial details are just window dressing. He thinks the true magic is the underlying mechanics of command.
So he's essentially trying to deconstruct the ritual into a technical manual. He wants to turn the mystical into the mechanical.
Exactly, he wants to move from the mysterious and inaccessible to a function of the spiritual structure of existence. It's an engineer's approach to the occult.
An engineer who thinks he can build a bridge to the divine using nothing but logic and a few basic principles. I'll wait to see if the bridge holds the weight of an archangel before I buy into that.
Okay, let's get into the meat of it. I'm looking at the text now, and Koetting pivots from all that grand talk of empires and warfare into something much more personal, much more raw.
I noticed that. It feels like he's stepping out of the history books and into a diary.
Exactly, he describes his first attempt at evocation. He's not in a temple with gold leaf and marble, he's in a cave. He's using a flat piece of metal as a ritual sword, and get this, he uses bags of flour to draw his protective circle.
Flour? Seriously? That's not a ritual, that's a bakery accident.
I know, right? He's even using a deep white bowl for porridge as an incense burner. He's basically de-ing the apocalypse. He says he goes up to a familiar cliff, enters a cave he'd consecrated months prior, and just starts. He's reciting words that he says were a cacophony in the midnight air.
And he says he was terrified by his own voice. That part actually hit me. The idea that in the silence of the night, your own ritual words sound lonely and disconnected.
Yeah. And then comes the sting. He says, I thrust the sword into the ground as the grimoire required and listened to the silence, waiting for a sign that I was not alone. But no one came.
Ouch. The classic ghosted by a demon moment.
Hey, at least he didn't have a microphone feedback scream like I did. A little silence is better than a piercing squeal, right?
True, Paco, but look at what happens next. He doesn't just give up and go home. He gets reproachful and humiliated by this failure, so he goes into this hyper-fixated study mode. He's reading everything. Crowley Shaw, texts on Sumerian civilization. He's obsessive.
It's like he's building a mental library so intense that the subject matter starts to consume him. He says he becomes observed with the Necronomicon and its demons.
And that's where the shift happens. He goes back to that same cave, but he's different. He says the words no longer sound like a cacophony. They flow from his throat and take life in the air. He describes the air getting thicker, the darkness deepening even under a full moon, and this undeniable presence filling the cave. And here's the kicker, the claim that defines his whole method. He says the spirit didn't appear in a visible material form, but he says the first principle of evocation was observed, and accordingly, success was achieved.
Wait. He's saying the ritual worked even though he didn't see anything? That's a huge leap.
That's exactly what he's arguing, isn't it? That the proof isn't a visual hallucination or a physical manifestation, but the subjective synthesis.
Right? He's tying it back to that idea of entering the image. He says a neophyte needs fanatical commitment to see even a finger of God, rather than just trying to manufacture a pretty picture. He says you have to immerse yourself in the doctrine, the philosophy, the very dogmas of the system.
So, it's not about what's out there. It's about making the ritual mechanism so real to you that your subconscious can't tell the difference between the magic and the floor you're standing on?
Precisely. He even quotes a Dr. Joseph Lisiecki here, who says this subjective synthesis allows the subconscious to create supernatural effects. He's saying the ritual is basically a way to hack your own perception.
It sounds so psychological. Like, if you believe the ritual is real enough, your brain provides the presence.
But look at the other way he presents it. He mentions a mentor who practiced hoodoo, someone who wasn't just reading books, but was making physical scented candles, inscribing sigils in wax.
Yeah, and that's the contrast. One is intellectual immersion, the other is ritualized, sensory, theatrical play. The mentor wasn't analyzing the magic, he was performing it to prepare himself for the grand rite.
So we have two paths, the scholar who thinks his way into a trance, or the practitioner who uses scent and wax to build a stage.
But both are trying to achieve the same thing, making the forces of the ritual as real as the surrounding physical reality.
And that's the terrifying part, because if you succeed in making the demon real to your mind, what happens when your mind decides it's time to let it out of the cave? Alright, let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about that subjective synthesis That idea of making the ritual so real that your brain can't help but react.
And he actually goes into some pretty wild detail about how people prepare for that. He says some practitioners are even decorating their lives to match the energy they want to call.
Yeah, he mentions people painting their rooms in colors that correspond to specific Sephiroth, the different spheres of the Tree of Life, and even wearing specific clothes every single day to honor a certain deity.
So, it's basically extreme method acting. I'm going to dress like a celestial bureaucrat so that when the bureaucrat shows up, I can hand him his paperwork.
Exactly. And he says others will perform daily rituals for a number of days equal to the numerological value of the spirit's name. If the name adds up to 7, you've got a 7-day commitment.
It's all about that preparatory immersion he mentioned earlier. He says the goal is to prepare yourself so that you can eventually accept that which seems impossible as that which is bound to happen.
Which sounds a lot like a fancy way of saying delusion.
But wait, look at the technical claim he makes here. This is where he gets really intense. He says that to achieve pure knowledge and power, the practitioner actually has to deactivate or reprogram the brain.
We deactivate the brain, like turn it off.
He says we have to reprogram it so that it ceases to interfere with the operation.
Good luck with that. My brain is a 24/7 news cycle of anxiety, and did I leave the stove on? You can't just hit the mute button on your own consciousness.
Actually, Jane, that's exactly what good comedy sit is. You shut off the thinking part of your brain and just let the rhythm take over. You become the punchline.
See, Paco's already mastered the coding method, but moving on, he addresses the amateurs here. He says most people just read spells straight from a grimoire and expect magic to happen.
And he's very critical of that. He says most grimoires aren't actually complete manuals. They're just records of what happened, not how to do it.
Right. He argues you need a proven working system. He says you shouldn't rely on your own whims or unverified instructions. You need a structure.
Which, strangely, sounds more responsible than the flour and porridge cave ritual he described earlier.
Well, he says the goal is to eventually build your own system, but only after you've mastered someone else's. You borrow the experience of others until you have enough personal occult force to create your own.
It's like learning to play jazz. You learn the scales and the standards before you start improvising your own solos.
Exactly, but then he takes a massive, almost frightening turn in the next section. He moves from learning the system to achieving omnipotence.
Oh boy. Here we go. The I am God phase of the book.
He says that humans, as we are, cannot do the impossible. We can't command the universe to move. Only God can do that.
So, what's the workaround?
He says, and I'm quoting him directly, to do the works of God, a person must accordingly become God.
Okay, that is a massive, terrifying claim. That's total spiritual insurrection.
That's some high-level tower energy right there. I'm renovating the temple, I'm claiming the deed to the property.
And he links this, becoming God, to a state he calls divine love. But, and this is important, he's not talking about being nice. He says this state is named that way because of the influx of powerful, useful force that's so overwhelming. The brain can't even process it.
He says the body can't even contain it. He describes tears flowing from the eyes because of the sheer grandeur of the power.
It sounds less like love and more like a massive, localized electrical surge. That's about to fry your nervous system.
He describes the actual ritual of it. He talks about the lesser banishing ritual of the Pentagram, the LBRP, as a way to create a circle of eternity. He describes the magician tracing pentagrams in the air with a dagger, calling on the archangels Raphael, Michael, Uriel, Gabriel to descend.
It's so much theatricality. The candles, the incense, the blue flames appearing in the air. It's all designed to create this sacred space.
But all that work, the swords, the names, the circles, he says it's all just to prepare the ground for one thing, the middle pillar ritual. He says you visualize light descending through your body, through your energy centers, until you are filled with this divine love.
And then, once you've reprogrammed your brain, deactivated your logic, and become God, you just wait for the universe to obey?
He says that in that moment, the magician knows that the entire universe has gone silent, listening to their words, and is ready to obey.
It's an architect's dream, isn't it? Building a reality where your word is the literal law of physics.
But if the universe is listening to you, are you sure you're the only one talking?
That is the question we have to live with.
That's enough existential dread for one session. My brain needs a reset.
Agreed. Let's take 5 and clear the air.